up in a different country with two women poking me. Son, what are you doing? That is what comes through after a while. My head is stuck to a table. I'm in a pub. I can tell by the smell. What day is it? I ask. What sort of question is that? I don't know. It's Tuesday. Where are you usually on a Tuesday? Which one? I say, biding time, blinking. Okay, she says. Would you like a calendar? Were you with the party last night? The other woman says. I nod. It's okay. He was at the do. Just give him some tea. I think he's from Europe. I drink a cup of sugary tea and rouse from the snug as they tidy around me. Did you see the foot lady yesterday, Maisie? I did, Min. I have to say, I had my doubts, but I've no complaints. These big city blow-ins, they don't know what they have to put up with. Oh, now, her mother was a culture just like you. Well, there she was, hacking away at my foot like a combine harvester. I says to her, it's not that kind of corn. As I listen to this, am I forgetting something? I can't feel my fingers. What is it that I had? I had something with me. I know. I can yawn. I can't taste my tongue. I had a tongue with me last time I looked, but who looks at their tongue? I can't feel my bag. That's it. I had a bag with me and something in it. And then I remember my dad. Where's my bag? I can't shout as my head, but the ladies are hovering nearby. I feel vertiginously sick, so I scuttle off to the bog. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to piss though, as my dick has shrunk and I can't find it. My whole body turns cold. I pull down my jeans and sit on the toilet and vomit into the sink next to my head. I start to sweat and the convulsions help me release some urine and watery shit. Everything is all right after 10 minutes, except that my ass and my throat are sore. I wash my face and drink from the bathroom tap. It tastes like cold town water, and I am grateful for that time left alone. When I come out of there, the ladies are polishing the brass pipes of the beer pumps, and I sit back down and stew. They leave me be. But when I eventually ask, no bag has been lost and here or found. I think I know what happened. Nigel took me to a party, a wake, and we drank and got shit-faced. And what was it we took? Acid, maybe. I know that he took my bag too, and I'll never find him, and I am a fool full of regret that cannot function until I get more sleep. So I nod off again. But I am in and out of things. Many demons grin in my face. What can they really do to me now except gloat? Fuck 'em, I say, and drift off. As soon as the float hits the cash register, my eyes pop open. I have a little money, still tucked into my socks. And I make my way to the bar. So, the barmaid asks, a pint of diesel, please. What's up with you? I lost my dad. Uh-huh, she's listening. Have you phoned anyone? It's not like that. He was in an urn. I say, well, okay. Where did you last see him? Sorry, but she says matter-of-factly. Dublin, I say. And she laughs at that. She snorts a big one and curses and crosses herself to keep the demons at bay. Holy feckin' Jesus, you even know where you are? No, I say. Well, I hope you said your goodbyes, she says and tucks at me. Yeah, I say, not really. I wasn't there. It was an accident. Here, she says, and hands me the remote for the TV. I'll talk to you in a bit. You're in Wicklow. Thanks, I say. She goes then and busies herself with her rigmarole, leaving my pint to settle it into itself. I don't blame her. I'm a mess, and she knows. I put my head down on the bar and wonder about the virtues of wood versus brass for a pillow. I'm Sharon, she shouts. Sean, I say, back to the shout. Dublin, she laughs. Sorry. Eventually, the stout burns my throat, but I don't care. I run to the toilet again, and I think that should be the end of it. I drink some more after, and I'm able to keep it down, and I weigh the consequences and wonder whether this has happened before, the stealing of an urn. I mean, it must have happened before. Maybe Nigel thought there was something else in it, something smuggled and illicit. He mustn't have believed me. And I still have the death certificate too, so Nigel is obviously not a good thief, just some opportunist. But where does that leave me? I sit there sipping and feel sorry for myself. A few more patrons enter the pub. They say hello to me, but I am lost. Sharon is on the phone for a bit, but comes back. Okay. She lights a fag and blows the smoke out the side of her mouth and picks a piece of tobacco out of her teeth, I guess. It could be something else. So, what are you going to do? Can I get one of those, I ask, pointing to her fag. No, she considers. You have to earn it. She gives me a hard stare. She blows more smoke. But funny, Kieran let you stay, so I guess you're okay. I am feeling hungry now with my emptied belly. I look about the bar, but they don't have much. Can I have a pickled egg, please? Sure, says Sharon. It's your funeral. I like them, I say. I took into it. It's like a chemistry lesson exploding in my mouth, but it helps with my reality. It gives me a jolt. Will you let me collect glasses for you tonight, I ask, cheeks full of acidic protein. Then I can earn it. Sharon thinks, why not? She puffs. But I tell you, there's not much going on. She gives me one of her cigarettes. I agree with her, but I have a lot going on. I have to get to Cork for the funeral, and I have no remains to bury. Where is it? Where are you, I mean? You could be anywhere. I need some air. I venture out into Bally this or that. My head is as clear as a hangover. The sky has rain clouds, which helps my blinking eyes. There is not much to this main street, but I am stood next to the train station. Oh yes, it's Bray. We came on the train, a bunch of us. It's not far at all. I wandered down the drag to sit and crash on forgotten sand. I light the cigarette and have an idea that filters through the memories of the bar, the grey sky, the sounding gulls, the shick and shook of the sea that we'd skimmed them thin stones at, that sea between us that was so easy to cross. I have an idea that filters through our history of you and me. We were terrible. Most things didn't matter. I have an idea as ash drops onto it and into through the stones. You are gone, and I need to find you. I return to the pub. How are you, Sean? Comes the cry. There are faces becoming more familiar by the minute. I'm fine. I stumble back to the bar. Sharon, can I have a whole jar of eggs, please? And another pint. And where are you going with this, she asks. But she gives me the jar. The weight and size of it are comparable to the urn that you were in. Of course, it's glass and not plastic, and I'll have to explain something, but not that I haven't got you. And there are only 10 eggs left. It's doable, I say to Sharon. Sure, you weirdo, she says. Okay, everyone, the pickled eggs are on me. Do it for the old fella, I shout, and raise the jar aloft with both hands like I've just won the cup. I hear one whoop, and I have a few takers, but I have to eat most of the eggs myself. It's a chastening experience. I know I can throw them away, but it's a waste. I probably won't eat for a while anyway, and my stomach revolts a little, but I manage. Afterward, I take the jar to the jacksie and I rinse out the glass, clean off the label, and then take it back and let it dry on the bar. I tip things in my favor. All night, I collect empties for my new friends and clean out the ashtrays, only I keep all the old ash in the pickle jar. I get a few free pints out of it and feel a lot steadier about my person. Later, I do have to sift it a little, but at least I have a new dad. Although he's lost weight. I wander down to the sea again and mingle some of the red sand with the grey ash. There he is now, all ready to go home and waiting to be interned. He smells of vinegar and old smoke, but he would anyway. I tighten the lid and stick on the new label that I made from some paper and tape. I have Wednesday to get across the country, and I fall asleep on the same snug couch, cradling the new urn. And that's the end of that bit.
Excellent. Thank you. Silent clapping.
One hand.
Good. We'll talk more after, but there's so much there. Andrea, you're up next. Andrea Kott is doing her memoir. She's a Sleepy Hollow based writer. Her work has appeared in Lilith Magazine, the New York Times, the Journal of American Medical Association, and many other publications. Salt on a Robin's Tale, an unlikely Jewish journey through childhood, forgiveness, and hope, from Blyden Square Books, I hope I'm saying that right, is her first book. And I was going to do the blurb from the back, but I think that might be better with you describing it. So go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to read the prologue because I think that sets the story. It won't be long, the nurse said, closing the blinds against the morning sun. My mother's chest was rising and falling in widening intervals. Her skin was ruddy, her hair matted around her face. She smelled like baby powder. I had raced in a cab from Manhattan to LaGuardia Airport to catch a flight to Florida the day before, minutes after my mother's sister had called from the hospital in Miami. Get here was all Aunt Lila said on that early August morning in 1992. Mom had just received the first of 2 experimental chemotherapies. She was comatose by the time I arrived. I slept in a chair by her bed and awoke the next morning, surprised to find her still breathing. I caressed her arm and kissed her forehead. Then I left. I've got to get back to New York, I told Lila in the hospital lobby, expecting her to urge me to stay. Do what you have to do, she said. Mom died the next day. I had tried to forgive her, but I hadn't gotten far enough. If I had, I wouldn't have left her side. It would take years for me to forgive my mother for being the parent she had been, depressed, alcoholic, abusive, absent. It would take many more for me to reconcile the angst from having grown up in a home where financial hardship and worry were constant, dislocation was frequent, and emotionally violent eruptions routine. A home whose brokenness was humiliating enough without us also being Jewish. My stormy life looked nothing like the lives of the kids I grew up with and defied every stereotypical notion I'd had of what being Jewish meant, flooding me with shame and alienating me from my own tradition. Yes, we were Jewish, and yet we weren't. There was no mezuzah inside our door frames or kosher dishes in our kitchen. We served milk with meat, ate deep fried scallops on Friday nights and bacon on Sunday mornings. During my early childhood, Mom cooked lavishly for the high holidays, but I didn't get to skip school and we didn't go to synagogue. I'd never even been inside a synagogue. On the first night of Passover, we attended a Seder, while I ate Wonder Bread French toast throughout the week. During Hanukkah, we lit the menorah, 1 candle each night until all were ablaze, a dramatic and beautiful symbol whose meaning I did not understand. The one Hanukkah gift that Mom managed to afford, a chatty Kathy doll, awaited me on Christmas morning beneath the tree that my brother Stephen made from rolled up pages of the New York Times. The contradiction didn't bother me, the menorah and the newspaper tree. I saw no problem celebrating both holidays, although given a choice, I would have celebrated Christmas. It felt so much more festive than Hanukkah. It filled the air with the smell of fresh pine and trees. It brought twinkling lights and other decorations to stores and streets and holiday specials to television. It brewed a swelling anticipation that was impossible not to absorb. Even though I was Jewish, I believed that Santa Claus kept his eye on me all year long to see whether I'd been naughty or nice and deserving of presents. I loved knowing that he was watching over me. I loved having something to believe in. My mother wasn't exactly thrilled about my ardor for Christmas, but that didn't stop her from bringing me to see Santa at Alexander's department store or letting me have a fake tree. It must have seemed like a harmless compromise, a way to stop my nudging and a surefire recipe for my happiness, however temporary. But I wanted more. I wanted a real tree. I wanted to celebrate Christmas. Can we get a tree? No. Why? Because we're Jewish. So, Jewish people don't have Christmas trees. Can we hang lights outside then? No. Why? Jewish people don't hang Christmas lights. Everyone has Christmas lights. Not Jewish people. Maybe no one knows we're Jewish. Everyone on our block knows who's Jewish. How does everyone know? They just do. Are all the houses without Christmas lights Jewish houses? Is that why people know we're Jewish? Mom wouldn't answer. I took a quick inventory of our Queens neighborhood. The Steins are Jewish. Their house is always dark. The Golds, the Rosensteins, and the Weisses' houses are dark. Mrs. Schwartz across the street is Jewish. Her house is dark. If we put up Christmas lights, then people won't have to know we're Jewish. The logic made perfect sense to me. Christmas decorations of any kind seemed like the perfect cover, like a wig on a balding head. If our house had them, I reasoned, then people would figure we'd belong to some denomination of Christianity. And if they figured that, then they wouldn't sneer at us and we wouldn't have to apologize for having Christmas decorations. My argument didn't persuade Mom, or perhaps she had simply stopped listening. Either way, she would not relent. I wasn't getting a Christmas tree, which seemed ridiculous and unfair. It was also confusing. I was allowed to dip one toe into Christmas, but couldn't publicly embrace the holiday because the tradition wasn't ours. Yet we didn't embrace our own tradition with any kind of enthusiasm. When the few Jewish holidays that we recognized ended, when the last yahrzeit flame died and the menorah resumed its place behind the gravy boat in the kitchen cabinet, we weren't Jewish anymore. My 5-year-old brain couldn't understand why we had to pay attention to being Jewish in the first place. But I ignored the inconsistencies and counted my blessings. I'd gotten a Chatty Cathy doll after all. It would be years before I understood that those inconsistencies mirrored my mother's own ambivalence toward Judaism, and that her ambivalence, and ultimately her complete disengagement from the tradition, had evolved from a lifetime of disappointment and grief. It wasn't until I reached young adulthood that I began to see how her years of inner turmoil and her attempts to deaden it had short-circuited her faith, and how her alienation from Judaism became mine. And I'm just going to read a little tiny bit more from a little bit further into the book. As a young child, my understanding of the high holidays was limited. In the most cursory way, Mom had explained that Rosh Hashanah was the Jewish New Year, and the more sugar-dipped challah we ate, the sweeter the next year would be. Yom Kippur, on the other hand, was the day when we apologized to God for anything we had done wrong and remembered loved ones who had died. Through my child lens, I saw Rosh Hashanah as the happy holiday and Yom Kippur as the sad one. Yom Kippur was also the day when my Jewish friends fasted. We didn't. My mother prohibited it, but didn't explain why. Being denied participation in this symbolically important ritual made me feel like an outsider, less than Jewish. Not feeling fully Jewish and not being Christian left me in limbo. I couldn't fast, and I couldn't have a Christmas tree. I had no tradition to own. I belonged nowhere. And still, I loved the high holidays because they suspended time. Mom didn't work. She didn't talk on the phone. She wasn't especially happy, but she became contemplative. She cooked, she polished the silver, she lit candles, she prayed. Our house was calm. These days turned my world into an oasis of tranquility. For that reason alone, they felt precious. Mom never went so far as to call the high holidays holy, but I could tell by the way she bowed her head and wept after lighting the yahrzeit candles that they were. The candles sat high on a counter out of reach. They burned from sundown before Yom Kippur to sundown the next day. Mom said each candle represented someone she loved, her mother, her father, her first husband, my brother's father, who could see them burning from heaven. She said that having the candles burn was like having them pay us a visit. Nevertheless, once they began to flicker and sizzle in pools of melted wax, I saw no harm in blowing them out. "Don't blow them out," Mom would gasp, grabbing a book of matches and relighting each wick. "They have to burn out on their own." She wasn't angry, she was sad. I felt sick with guilt, wondering if I had time for one more apology to God before the sun went down and the holiday ended. I never wanted the high holidays to end. I didn't want Mom's serenity or the peacefulness at home to vanish. I especially didn't want to have to take off my Star of David. These were the only days when Mom let me wear the gold and silver Star of David necklace that Grandma Irene had had engraved with my initials. During the rest of the year, she kept the necklace wrapped in tissue paper, tucked into a dark blue velvet box that she hid in the back of her sweater drawer. "It's not necessary to advertise that you're Jewish," she would say, as if I asked to wear it on an ordinary day. Wearing it on the holidays is enough.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, so introducing our third and final reader for the night, David Puretz. Are you still with us? You're not in my, there you are, thumbs up. He is the editorial director at Global City, an independent press that publishes the literary and cultural journal Global City Review, and a growing list of other books and anthologies, including his own. As editorial director, he oversaw the relaunch of the journal and the publication of the newest online and print journal issue, Legacies. Puretz teaches writing at Yeshiva University in New York City, where he currently resides. He earned an MFA in creative writing from the City College of New York, CUNY. The Escapist is his debut novel, and I read over some of the reviews on your website, which are excellent, and somebody refers to it as a gut punch, sizzling, brilliant, unflinching, which I can't say, an escapist road trip fueled by drugs and starring an anti-hero. So sounds thrilling. Off you go.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure being here with all of you this evening. So thank you. And thank you, Anthony and Andrea. Really enjoyed your readings. So the book is called The Escapist, came out in late January. And again, just so thankful to have these outlets to be able to still continue to read the book, even though I'm stuck here at home. I'll just read a little bit from the first chapter. Find Dad. Finally confront him about it. Confront him about everything. Use force if necessary. Find out how he got that eye gouged out. All those scars on his head. Was it from face-to-face combat? From shrapnel flying through the air from a roadside IED? From a bullet grazing his face? Make him reveal what he feels when he looks in the mirror. How unbearable it is to look. How unbearable it is. that he's still here and so many of them are gone, that you're still here and that you still remember, that you'll never forget. Is that what made him run off? Did the volcanic pressure from all that buried shame finally cause this beast to erupt? You'll find him and you'll hit him with the hard stuff. You won't wimp out this time. You'll go in deep. You'll go in for the kill. This time will be different. You had the chance the last time you saw him. You were sitting there with him at the table in Dundalk. It was silent. It was right there for you. But what did you do? You talked about badminton. Of course you did. How you had started playing again. You're still playing that stupid fucking game, Billy? That's how he said it. Fast and matter-of-factly. It's not stupid. It's fun. It's fun hitting people with the shuttlecock. I spiked it right into this lanky kid's face, and he stumbled and fell to the floor. But Dad's face didn't change. He didn't even acknowledge your response. But then his blank face changed. You remember what made it change. It wasn't you. He would never change his face for you unless he was doing naughty. His face changed when he glanced out the living room window and saw one of the neighborhood kids on the front lawn holding a leash around a small dog's neck. The dog was dropping a large deuce right there on the lawn. Dad watched, shaking his head. The dog finished her business, and then the kid started walking away. What the fucking piss, Dad said. Then he jumped out of his chair, ran to the front door, and then outside. He yelled something at the kid, something like, "Hey, clean this shit off my yard. This is private property, you prick." The kid chose to ignore him. The kid just continued walking away with his head down, speaking softly to his pup. Dad kept yelling at him. "Stop now. You will clean this shit off my property." Still no response from the kid. Then Dad bent down and picked up the piece of shit, picked it up with his bare hand and chucked it at him. It hit him on the back of the head, bullseye. The kid reached back, then looked at his fingers, realized what had just happened. "What the fuck is your problem?" the kid yelled as he turned back around. He took a few steps toward Dad, but when the kid saw his face, saw that Dad was this one-eyed miscreant, he froze in place, bewitched by his presence. Dad did that to people. And Dad was staring at him, his eye locked on his target. My problem? My problem is little disrespectful fobbits like you leaving dog shit in my yard. He yelled it with his back arched straight, his arms stiffly at his sides, his head bobbing forcefully forward. "This little bluehead's out of formation," he said as he approached the kid. "This little bluehead needs to learn some respect." He'd fallen back into it. "What the fuck are you talking about, mister?" Then Dad grabbed him by his shirt. "You shit in my yard? You shit in my yard?" The pup picked up on his owner's fear and yapped and howled and danced around Dad's legs. The pup tried gnawing on Dad's pant leg, like a mosquito sucking the blood of an elephant. A nuisance, but not enough to sidetrack the beast from finishing his mission. "I'm calling the police," the kid said in a cracking voice. "I am the police, motherfucker." He always said shit like that when he was back in it. The war. You came down the steps, ran over, you grabbed Dad by the shoulders, and Dad jabbed back with his elbow and struck you square on the nose, and you fell to the ground, 20 years old, crying there on the sidewalk like a baby. God, you were a fucking pussy. "Can we please just go inside?" you pleaded, your pants a little piss-stained. Dad turned his attention from the kid to you and helped you up. He brought you back into the house and sat you down on the couch, filled a bag with ice and rested it on your nose. The stench of dog shit permeated your breathing for hours. Billy Shute put down the journal, amazed. He had intended to leave it blank, yet he had begun writing. He was on the side of the highway, somewhere in western New York. Where? He couldn't see any signs, but this was his life again, sitting in a car in the breakdown lane on the side of the highway. It's what Billy did best, escape. Felix's farm, where he had been working for the past couple of weeks, had become a wasteland for him. Again, like all of America, was pure desert. Billy had pulled his car over and written, as Felix had requested of him, keeping a journal, writing it all down, opening the pathways. It was Felix's last-ditch bid, the morning Billy fled the farm, to help this troubled boy he knew was maybe past saving. He saw something in Billy, just as his daughter had, for it was Nicole that got him the job at the farm. It would have surprised Felix to know that Billy listened, took his advice to heart, that the words had just poured out of Billy into this journal, which Felix had slid into his hands earlier that morning as he was fleeing. And the anecdote about his father, that was Billy's beginning. Game over, he finally said aloud, shaking himself out of a trance. He couldn't just park forever on the side of a highway. Go to Grandma. Start there. And while you're at it, go see Uncle George. Uncle George will let you stay the night. And Peter. Go see Peter, too. That fucker. And Cynthia. No, not Cynthia. The thought of seeing his stepmother made him suddenly want to shrivel up. She won't be able to help you. She could never help you. She couldn't even help herself. He turned on the ignition and opened up the cooler on the floor of the passenger seat. It contained several pill bottles and nondescript bags partially concealed by plastic bottles of water and Gatorade and a towel. He removed the towel to wipe the sweat off of his face, took out one of the water bottles and a pill bottle, removed 2 yellowish capsules, washed them down, and was on the move again. Billy drove south through rural New York, through Pennsylvania, into Maryland, chain smoking, and switching radio stations between heavy metal, pure hits of the 80s, 90s, and today, and droll British public broadcasting voices. He got off the highway at the edge of Baltimore County and drove along the eastern banks of the Chesapeake Bay. When he got to Merritt Boulevard, to his old neighborhood in Dundalk, he saw the same buildings boarded up, the same fast food joints and gas stations exactly as they had always been, like the place was frozen in time. He slowed his car down as he passed the 2-family duplex where he had grown up. It had been almost a year since he'd been back. The lawn was overgrown, and the tree in front was still rotting from the inside out, its limbs and branches sparser. The sidewalk, still uneven cement. A horn sounded behind him. From the car, he couldn't see Cynthia through the window, couldn't tell if she was inside, but with her bad back and lack of mobility, and most likely an even more bitter depression, it would have been rare for his stepmother to be elsewhere. She did have a job, but it was at night. He might have pulled his car over, parked, gotten out, even gone inside to see her, to confront her, too. But there was a driver behind him, a driver with a loud horn. And that horn was a bolt to his consciousness, a shock to his system, a sign to keep driving. He continued west through downtown Baltimore. Billy drove up to his Uncle George's house in Towson, a quaint house on a quaint street in a quaint suburb of the city. Parked the car, sat, and stared into the windows a while. He got out, stretched his legs and his back, and then rested against the hood. A car eventually pulled into the driveway. Aunt Tracy. Billy, what are you doing here? Hey, Aunt Tracy. She walked over to him and gave him a hug. Then she pulled back to inspect him. I haven't seen you in so long. God, look at you. You're all grown up. You look more like your father every time I see you. Can I stay the night with you guys? Billy asked. I came to visit Grandma. After pausing for a moment, for he had caught her off guard, she said that she thought it would be okay. You're just going to stay the night, huh? Yes, just for the night. I hope I'm not intruding. No, not intruding at all. Not at all. Come on inside, Billy boy. And at the stairs to the house, Aunt Tracy looked back at him while fumbling for her keys. Greg will be home. He's back from college. He loves college. He's studying marketing, you know. He'll be so happy to see you. Marketing, cool. They walked in and Billy took a seat on the couch. Aunt Tracy went upstairs to put her stuff down. Billy could hear her talking in a low voice, but couldn't make out the words. She eventually came down with Greg following behind her. Greg, look who it is, Cousin Billy. Hi, Greg. Hi, Billy. Where's Uncle George? I just spoke to him on the phone. I told him you're here, but he's still at work, but I told him you're staying the night. He suggested we all go out for dinner. A real nice dinner. How does that sound, Billy boy? Uncle George had found God later in life. He thanked God before each meal. Aunt Tracy closed her eyes alongside her husband and appeared to be in some kind of reverie, hanging off of each word of his prayer. It struck Billy how different things would have been if his dad had also found God. Then he wondered how one goes about finding God in the first place, where to look. Do you find God, or does God find you? Or do you just bump into each other somewhere on the side of the road and strike up a conversation, become friends, fall in love? Billy stared forward at Greg, who was staring at the wall. Neither of them blinked. Greg said amen along with his parents. As they ate, Billy followed along. There were many moments of silence, interrupted by humdrum conversation. Uncle George and Aunt Tracy talked about work. Greg sat quietly, played with his food, and made intermittent bites. Billy also did a form of food playing, yet his was more like food arranging, separating each food item into its own neat pile on the plate without letting any of the piles touch. Billy talked about his job at Copenhagen in New York City and didn't mention that he had quit a month ago. Of course, they were scared to talk to him about anything real, especially about his dad. They didn't want to talk about Cynthia either. No uncomfortable conversation. It was Uncle George's way. Just get the meal over with. Eat your food, go home, maybe put on a movie, go to sleep, send the boy on his way. Uncle George picked up the tab for dinner. In fact, Billy was counting on it. Getting a good free meal was worth the uncomfortable silences with family members who were more or less strangers with recognizable faces ascribed to a few old memories. The next morning, Friday, Billy awoke and sat up in bed. He heard movement downstairs, feet shuffling on floorboards, hushed voices, doors opening and closing. Uncle George called his name from downstairs. Billy opened the bedroom door and peeked out his head. Good morning, how'd you sleep? Fine. Good, hey, listen, Aunt Tracy and I are off to work. Greg's still here, and we wrote out directions to the Frederick Nursing Home in case you need them. Have fun with Grandma. Thanks, Uncle George. And the front door shut loudly. Billy closed the bedroom door and got back into bed. He pulled the sheet over his body, up to his chin, and stared at the ceiling. Then he heard the downstairs door open again, heard the creaking of the stairs, a knock on the bedroom door. Come in. The door propped open a few inches, and Uncle George stuck his head through the crack of it. Listen. Uncle George paused. I just want to tell you, I want to tell you that I'm sorry about everything that happened with your dad. George pushed the door open and slowly entered the room with his head down. He must have gone through hell out there. I can't imagine what he had to have seen, what he had to have gone through. He sat down at the edge of the bed by Billy's feet. You know, he and I, well, we've always had our differences. Your dad and I haven't talked in a long time, as you know. It's been, 8 or 9 years now. We've said some pretty nasty things to each other, done some pretty nasty things to each other. Growing up, things were tough for us. Being a kid in Dundalk, with our dad, your grandfather, I sometimes forget how hard things were, not just for me, but for your dad too. Especially for your dad. Alan hated your grandfather. Your grandfather hated him too. Hated both of us. Probably because when he looked at us, he was seeing himself, was seeing something about himself. And only hate would make a man do the kinds of things he did to us. Billy was all too familiar with the sentiments. I don't know how much Alan has talked about this, if he's ever talked about it, how much you know, maybe you know none of it, but he took it out on us. Alan got the worst of it. Billy wondered how much Uncle George knew of his own experience with his father. Maybe Uncle George had only assumed. It's funny, Uncle George said, Alan still followed in your grandfather's footsteps. He also joined the army. Just as much as Alan needed to get away from him, in some weird way, I think he enlisted for him, to get closer to him, to understand. I ran away from the fire. Your dad ran right into it, head first. That's just the kind of man he is, just like your grandfather. And your grandfather, he really had it tough after the war too. He was also injured, badly. And he was never the same. The war maimed him. He didn't die out there, but that's what did him in. We didn't understand that as kids. And it's still hard, but it's God's will. Billy was still staring straight up at the ceiling. I just want you to know, Uncle George said. I want your dad to know. I hope he can get through. Then in a low voice, Uncle George continued, I wanted to call him. I really did. I just never could do it. And now he's off, God knows where. I'm gonna find him, Billy said. He had written down the same sentiment just a day ago in the journal Felix had given him, but it startled him to say it. The words were a surprise just as much to him as they were to Uncle George. Stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody's writing is so raw and honest. And I feel this, the fraughtness of family coming through, that you're all grappling with a major parent figure that's very haunting and overbearing. But I'd love to open it up to everybody else before I have my own questions or comments. And I'll also just go ahead now and share in the chat, because I didn't want to be disruptive, but there's the links to authors' books. But if you had anything you wanted to ask or comment on, you can unmute yourself and jump in.
I think I am unmuted.
There you are.
Yeah, no, I was surprised at how the themes are pretty similar in all three. And I don't know how factual Andrea and David's books are, but mine was kind of based on my life, but not, I made up stuff, you know?
And Andrea's memoir, so
Right.
there's the bit about actually having to remember, which stops me from writing memoir. Is in fiction, you're more free to do what you need to do.
Yeah,
There's a little bit of religion running through the three as well. You know?
Yeah.
It's also good to know you didn't really lose your dad.
Oh, no, I didn't. I delivered him.
Okay.
Yeah, and my character is so different than who I am personally, but I get that question more than any other, which is how much of your fiction is autobiographical.
Right. And your dad's here, though. I mean,
He's gone now. He was here a minute ago, and
I couldn't stand it.
and he is the biggest sweetheart. And so the hardest part was I'm telling the story about this evil father, and then my father is this beautiful man. And so I had to work hard to make sure that people understood that, because people tend to sometimes confuse autobiography and fiction.
Totally.
So,
I did it the other way around. So my dad was a bit of an evil bastard. And, he's actually not so bad in the book.
Interesting. So it's kind of fun to imagine the opposite for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andrea, you're just stuck with whatever you
What do you mean stuck?
You have to, because your memoir, you have to write about what you know and what you remember.
So what people ask is if everything is true, and the answer is yes. And yes, everything is true. I didn't make anything up.
Yeah. Is that scary? To put yourself out there like that?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Apart from Father Christmas.
All right.
No, I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you. What did he say?
Oh, I was just saying apart from Father Christmas, because he's
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I didn't make it. Those are really, they were always very powerful memories. And they have been with me my whole life. And so I decided I had to let them out. So.
And did you know you needed to write memoir and not fiction?
No, absolutely. I don't have an imagination, so I can't write fiction. But I've only written first-person essays. So, this was sort of the result of a smaller essay that had been published that got, was sort of the beginning that led me to write the book.
Mm-hmm. We got a question in the chat. I don't know if they're for everybody. Leslie Day was asking, are these memories liberating in any way? So maybe more for you, Andrea.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was cathartic. No question.
And David, yours seems like the one least related to reality. But you made it a coming of age with an anti-hero. Is it, did people assume you're the anti-hero, so they think you have all those bad qualities of the anti-hero?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
no, I can't see anything. Oh, there you are. Sorry, what was the question? Somebody just phoned me and I was like, what?
Oh, sorry. It was more for David about his anti-hero character, but when everybody assumes you're writing about yourself, that's kind of a brave thing to do, to write a character that has so many flaws and put yourself out there like that.
Yeah, well, the story started so long ago, very differently from how it ended up. And the character really started out of a piece I wrote when I was in undergrad. And I really wanted to write a story about someone coming into writing and how they came into writing. And I wanted to capture this kind of meta-narrative component where we get to see the writer's perspective, but also the third person giving an overview of the story. So it goes back and forth between the two. But it started just because I wanted to capture this experience of coming to writing and using writing as a way to heal, which is very true for myself. However, my character is using writing to heal in a very different way. So, there certainly are some things about this character that are related to my own experience. He's a figment of my imagination, which means he is very much me as well. He's all of me and he's none of me at the same time, if that makes any sense. And I just wanted to create this this story where you're talking about things that aren't talked about too often, but yet stay in the head always, specifically mental and physical abuse from parents and from the world around you, and that pain and dealing with that pain, yet using writing as a real source of healing. So that is very true to my own experience, yet so far removed from what he actually went through and what his family makeup was, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Anthony, were you working on your book at the Writers Center when you were taking classes here, or was that before this?
So what I did, I wrote the first half before, and then I was struggling of trying to figure out where it was going to go. And it kind of got split into two, but Kirsten Backus really helped me with kind of workshopping it and then just making me write every week, basically, so that it did get finished, because the words just come out. So yeah, it really helped for the second half, but I had written the first half before I went there.
She's an excellent teacher. She's my favorite, because
Yeah,
I took her as well before I started this job. Somebody asked you specifically, Anthony, did you soften the father character as a way of healing or for understanding him?
No, do you know what I always thought about writing is I was scared to upset people in my family. So, I didn't want to upset my mom. I didn't want to upset my dad, but then, my dad died anyway. So I think it's not healing. It's more like trying to have fun with it and make it different, because my book is not really horrible. I mean, there's a lot of dad jokes in it. You know what I mean? So I think, yeah, no, it wasn't necessarily healing, but just making it lighter.
Andrea, were you worried about offending anyone and treading over family history?
I changed names of people that I did not want to offend. And the people whose names I did not change, I sent them the text so that they knew what I was saying. So I was, you know, it's the journalist in me, or the, you know.
But then what happens if they object? You're not going to take it.
That's actually, you know, that happened with one individual. Somebody did object, and you know, I guess it makes me sort of a wuss, but I had to do a little massaging, because I'm not, you know, at the end of the day, I don't want to hurt anybody. So, you know, never ever would want to do that. So, but nothing took away from the truth, you know, just.
Well, at least you're not Mary Trump.
Oh gosh. That's a big conversation we could have.
I think there is a balance about truth and hurt, definitely.
Do you all have something else going on for project number 2?
I do, yeah, I do. I'm trying to write more of a historical Victorian kind of novel about this real character who existed. And yeah, don't want to say too much. Otherwise you'll all steal my idea.
You jinx it.
For me, I'm just working on a new journal issue, which is coming out in about a week. So that's been taking up a lot of my time, and editing these other pieces that I think are wonderful. globalcityreview.com. But you know, I got 2 kids at home. There's no time to be writing right now. But soon, hopefully, I'll get back into the game.
Yeah, don't you love when people assume just because we're in quarantine here that you must have time now to do your writing? No way in hell.
It's time now than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, I haven't written much. And I think it's because, you know, I mean, we've been homeschooling and things like that. So.
Yeah, if you have kids, it's not happening.
But I don't know. I haven't even read much.
Right.
Murphy, aren't you also still working on some children's books? Like
Yeah, I have a couple of children's books going as well. Yeah.
That's great.
But that's different because I like to illustrate and it takes a long time, you know. So.
Can't swear in the kids' books.
Pardon?
You can't be swearing in the children's books, though.
Oh, no. I have different
Or maybe.
Yeah, I didn't even swear as much as David anyway.
I know.
Yeah, sorry for that.
It's all good.
Should have given a heads up before I cursed for much of those 10, 12 minutes.
Well, the kids didn't walk in. So.
I don't think anybody minds. We don't want to censor.
Well, that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I guess we're winding down unless somebody else has some comment or question. I don't see anything else in the chat. A lot of people don't want to talk and they just submit questions for the chat. So that's okay too, if you feel like it. But it was really nice to have everybody here this evening. I know there's a lot of options on the internet, but it's nice to have this facsimile of getting together and having a little salon in our homes. So I'm really grateful that you all came out and that you could share with us. And I wish you luck on peddling these books. I know that's the hard part. We'd rather be writers than marketers. So it's just, I don't know what it's like now in the book industry, but somebody's reading.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for coming, and we'll do this again. Thank you so much to everybody. Have a great night.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Excellent.